The story that a group of people called Aryans went to India from somewhere outside India around 1500 BCE is a fake story that was cooked up by European linguists. This fake story can be demolished on multiple grounds based on linguistics, geography, literature, genetics, archaeology, and astronomy. The entire work can be found in my book, available under these separate titles on Amazon Kindle and as a separate paperback edition for India from Subbu Publications. The links are in the description below. Indian history prior to 1000 BCE has essentially been scripted by Western philologists, linguists, and Indologists. 200 years ago, there were no Aryans or Dravidians, but now we are taught that there were people called Aryans, and these Aryans came from outside India and they brought their language to India. How did this come about? Basically, the Aryan invasion story was created specifically to claim that the Sanskrit language could not have been originally in India, but was brought to an uncivilized heathen India by superior conquerors coming from Europe. But why Sanskrit? This is because no one in Europe knew why European languages were similar. They knew that there were some similarities, but they really couldn't explain why those languages were similar. They thought that somehow European languages had all originated from Semitic languages. They didn't like that fact, but they had no other explanation until they came across Sanskrit. Most of us are probably aware of the similarities between Sanskrit words and words in European languages, such as Agni for fire and ignis, Pada for foot and pedal, Danta for teeth and dental, and other such words. The number of similarities that Sanskrit has with all European languages can be seen in this table, and you find that when you take words for kinship, body parts, body organs, feelings, qualities, terrain, and other such words, you find that Sanskrit has commonality with more than 78% of words. Latin and ancient Greek too have similarities, but less so than Sanskrit. And other languages such as German, English, and Lithuanian have fewer and fewer similarities. So Sanskrit is the one big common language. Max Muller wrote, Sanskrit stepped into the midst of these languages, and there came the light and warmth of mutual recognition. So why was it so important to claim a language? Basically, one needs to go back to where Europeans got their history from. In Europe, in the 19th and early 20th century, history was derived mainly from the Bible and from Greek history. And in the Bible, we have the story of Noah, the man who built this huge boat and rescued all animals in the world from a flood. And he had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Now, Ham apparently saw his father naked, or at least he saw his father doing something that required him to be naked. And so Noah got very angry with him and cursed his son Ham and said that all his descendants would be slaves. And so black people were called Hamites, and they were slaves. Now the children of Shem became the Semites, that is, the hated Jews, and now the Arabs. And finally, the people of Europe who were Christians were the Japhethites, who were thought to be a superior race. But then explorers from Europe found some magnificent ruins in Assyria. Now, Assyria is the region of southern Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. And they found these magnificent ruins and discovered that these ruins actually had places and names from the Old Testament. And this really bothered the European Christians. How could the hated Semites have greater antiquity than them? The Europeans thought that they were the chosen race after all. And this was around the time they came across Sanskrit. And it was obvious that Sanskrit was an extremely ancient language that connected up all the European languages. So suddenly now the Europeans had something that gave them greater antiquity than the hated Jews. The ancient language of Sanskrit that was discovered in India provided the solution. Initially, Sanskrit was thought to be the mother language of all European languages. But gradually this changed. The problem really was, why was this most highly developed language, Sanskrit, found among dark-skinned Indian Hamites? So it couldn't be that it originated in India. The Sanskrit language must have come to India with the Aryans of Europe. I will explain how they came up with the name Aryans later. But in any case, the Aryans apparently went from Europe and took the language to India. And in India, these Aryans got corrupted by mixing with black races. A man called Thomas Huxley in 1890 said, the Aryan invaders were white men. They intermixed with the dark Dravidian aborigines. And then I have this book in my house which used to belong to my grandfather called The Living Races of Mankind. And it says, the Vedic Aryans received a deep taint from Dravido-Kolarian aborigines. So the Europeans invented history for Europe and India. The European Aryan race was invented to explain this well-developed language in India. And a counter-Dravidian race of black Hamites was invented as a corrupting black non-Christian heathen race whom the Aryans had to defeat. There was a word in the Vedas, and that word is Arya, and the word Aryan was coined from the Vedas. Now Arya is actually an adjective. It describes the quality of a person. Arya is not a noun, it's not the name of a people or a race. For example, the word Sundari means a beautiful woman. There is no such thing as Sundarian. You can't have a race of beautiful women. Now Arya means a noble person, and there is no such thing as an Aryan race. It was simply invented to say that Aryans brought language to India. In fact, the word Aryan does not exist in the Veda. The word Arya occurs 22 times, and the word Dasa and Dasyu that have been interpreted as being slaves occurs about 50 to 70 times in the Veda, but there is no racial connotation. Meanings of the Dasyu basically mean Anindra, Avrata or Anyavrata, meaning that these people were not a race of black people, they were just people who did not worship Indra, who did not follow the Vedic sacrifices or followed traditions that were different, which is Anyavrata. Now after World War II, the racist word Aryan was discarded. It was too embarrassing to retain it. So the name Indo-Aryan was changed to Indo-European. But nothing else changed. The search for origins of language continued outside India. And the fact that European pride plays such a big role in trying to keep the language somewhere Europe side comes from a quote by Ballery, who is a well-known linguist. It says the location of the homeland and description of how the Indo-European languages spread is central to any explanation of how Europe became European. In a larger sense, it is a search for the origins of Western civilization. So this Aryan migration theory is simply a supporting actor in a grand theory of how European languages came from a magnificent mother language.